The sun had barely risen when Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell arrived at Fort Harmony, the sprawling military base nestled among the rolling hills where discipline and precision were the currency of every soldier's day. The early morning air was thick with the sounds of drills and the crisp cadence of marching feet, yet Sarah moved through the compound with a quiet urgency that set her apart. At 27, she was new to this unit, her reputation preceding her like a shadow, one of quiet determination, but also of a reticence that many mistook for weakness. Sarah's uniform was impeccable, her posture rigid but composed. She was a woman who preferred observation over conversation, listening more than speaking, calculating rather than boasting. It was a demeanor that did not win her easy friends among the unit's seasoned officers, who saw vocal assertiveness as the hallmark of leadership. Whispers followed her down the corridors, some doubted her confidence, others questioned her capability. To them, her silence was an absence, a void where boldness should reside. As she stepped into the bustling mess hall, fragments of conversations echoed around her, jokes about the new officer who never said more than a few words, speculation about whether she could cut the mustard in the high-stakes environment of military command. Sarah ignored the murmurs, her eyes scanning the room until they settled on the group of officers preparing for the day's strategic planning exercise. This was her crucible, the moment she had been waiting for, though she knew the challenge would be more than tactical, it was social, political, a test of her very presence. Lieutenant Daniels, a brash and outspoken officer known for his sharp tongue and quick temper, caught sight of her and smirked. "Hey, Mitchell," he called out, loud enough for others to hear, "you planning to say something today or just take notes like a secretary?" Laughter rippled through the nearby group. Sarah met his gaze steadily but said nothing. The room fell into a brief silence, then the commanding officer, Major Reynolds, cleared his throat and called the meeting to order. The exercise was daunting, a simulated crisis requiring the team to devise a comprehensive strategy to neutralize an insurgent threat in a volatile region. Maps were spread across the table, accompanied by satellite imagery and intelligence reports. Voices rose and fell as officers debated tactics, some eager to assert their ideas, others more measured but no less determined. Sarah listened, her mind absorbing every detail, every nuance of the terrain and enemy disposition. When a particularly contentious debate erupted over whether to deploy a direct assault or a covert infiltration, Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was calm, deliberate, cutting through the clamor like a sharpened blade. "If we opt for a direct assault, we risk high casualties and alerting the enemy's reinforcements. A covert infiltration allows us to gather intelligence and disrupt their command structure with minimal exposure." She paused, letting the words settle. "I recommend a two-pronged approach. Initiate a diversionary assault to draw attention while the infiltration team targets the key nodes." The room quieted further, officers exchanging glances. Lieutenant Daniels scoffed, "Sounds like a gamble. We don't have time for piecemeal attacks." But Major Reynolds nodded thoughtfully, "Mitchell's plan leverages our strengths and minimizes risk. Let's run the simulation with this strategy." As the team worked through the details, Sarah's strategic insight became evident. She identified vulnerabilities others missed, anticipated enemy movements, and adjusted plans accordingly. Her quiet leadership created a rhythm within the group, a subtle command that guided their collective focus without the need for grandstanding. The simulation progressed with a steady tempo, the team executing maneuvers on the map, recalibrating as new information emerged. By the time the exercise concluded, it was clear that Sarah's approach had shaped a plan both innovative and practical. The commanding officer addressed the room, his tone measured but approving. Lieutenant Mitchell's strategy provided a critical edge in this exercise. It's a reminder that leadership isn't always about volume but vision. Despite the compliment, Sarah remained reserved, her eyes fixed on the maps as the others packed away their materials. In the shadows of the room, Lieutenant Daniels muttered under his breath, "Quiet, maybe, but smarter than I thought." It was the closest to praise she had heard, yet it was tempered by lingering skepticism. As the day wore on, the cultural divide within the unit became more apparent. Sarah's silence was still interpreted by some as aloofness, an unwillingness to engage. The officers who thrived on banter and bravado found her inscrutability frustrating. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle shift was occurring. Those who observed her more closely began to appreciate the steadiness she brought, the way her presence steadied the room without demanding attention. In the afternoon, Sarah was called to a briefing with Major Reynolds, who offered her a seat near the window overlooking the training grounds. The older officer, seasoned by years of command, regarded her with a level of scrutiny that bordered on appraisal. Lieutenant, I want you to know your contribution today didn't go unnoticed. This unit thrives on action, but it also needs minds like yours, calm, precise, unflappable. Sarah inclined her head, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. Thank you, sir. I understand the importance of both. Major Reynolds leaned back, folding his arms. I expect more from you. Not just tactics, but leadership. You'll find that sometimes, leading is about knowing when to speak, and when to listen. The words resonated with Sarah. She had long understood that her quiet nature would be both her challenge and her strength. To lead, she would have to navigate a world that prized loud confidence, carving space for her measured voice to be heard. Later that evening, as the compound settled into a rare calm, Sarah stood alone on the balcony of her quarters, the base lights flickering below like distant stars. The murmurs of the day echoed in her mind, the doubt, the ridicule, the cautious respect. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but the strategic exercise had planted a seed of acknowledgement. It was a beginning, fragile yet real. Sarah's fingers traced the edge of the metal pinned beneath her uniform, a quiet symbol of past missions and sacrifices few here knew about. It was a reminder of battles fought in silence and shadows, where words were useless, and actions defined destiny. Here, in this new chapter of her military life, she vowed to prove that leadership could be forged not only in loud declarations but in the steady resolve behind a calm gaze. The night deepened, and with it, the weight of expectations and opportunity. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests of will and skill. But for now, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood poised at the threshold of acceptance, ready to transform doubt into respect through the power of quiet competence. The dawn light spilled across the training grounds of Fort Harmony, casting long shadows over the soldiers assembling for the day's simulation. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. This exercise was no ordinary drill, it was a high-intensity field operation designed to test the unit's readiness under pressure. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood among her peers, calm and composed, her eyes scanning the terrain maps and mission parameters with the same quiet intensity that had begun to reshape the way her colleagues perceived her. In the days following the strategic planning exercise, a subtle transformation had taken root within the unit. The initial skepticism that had greeted Sarah's silence was giving way to a grudging respect. Officers who once dismissed her as timid now found themselves consulting her during briefings, her insights valued for their clarity and precision. Yet, despite this shift, Sarah remained reserved, wary of the spotlight and the expectations it carried. The simulation was brutal, a fast-moving scenario in which insurgents had taken control of a small village on the edge of the training range. The mission was to infiltrate, gather intelligence, and neutralize hostile elements without alerting reinforcements. As the team prepared, tension rippled through the ranks. The stakes were high, and every decision could mean success or failure. Early into the exercise, chaos erupted when an unexpected enemy patrol intercepted a reconnaissance squad. The unit momentarily faltered, confusion threatening to unravel their plan. Amidst the turmoil, Sarah's voice emerged from the comms, steady and commanding. Hold positions. Redirect Squad Bravo to flank left. Maintain radio silence except for critical updates. Her instructions were concise, her tone unwavering. The team adjusted, executing her plan with precision. Lieutenant Daniels, who had once mocked her silence, found himself relying on her guidance. "Mitchell's got eyes everywhere," he muttered, a hint of admiration coloring his words. The patrol was outmaneuvered, and the mission regained its momentum. Throughout the operation, Sarah's keen observation proved invaluable. She detected subtle shifts in enemy patterns, anticipated reinforcements, and advised tactical adjustments that minimized casualties. Her ability to remain composed under pressure inspired confidence, transforming the unit's dynamic. No longer was she an outsider, she had become the anchor in a storm. Back at the command post, as the simulation drew to a close, Major Reynolds reviewed the after-action reports. His expression was thoughtful as he summoned Sarah for a private debrief. "Lieutenant, your performance today was exemplary. You kept the team focused when things could have spiraled out of control." Sarah met his gaze, the weight of his praise settling over her like a mantle. "Thank you, sir. I only did what was necessary." The major nodded, then leaned forward, his voice lowering. "There's something the unit doesn't know about you, isn't there?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I've been privileged to participate in covert operations prior to this assignment. A flicker of surprise crossed Reynolds' face. You don't mention it often. Because the work speaks louder than words, she replied softly. Reynolds regarded her for a moment longer before continuing. Your record includes commendations for valor during those missions. It's clear your experience is an asset this unit needs. Word of Sarah's undisclosed commendations began to circulate, shifting perceptions once again. The officers who had doubted her now saw the depth behind her silence, a history forged in dangerous, shadowed conflicts where courage was measured not by volume but by deeds. Lieutenant Daniels, previously dismissive, approached her one afternoon with a newfound respect. I underestimated you, Mitchell. You've earned your place here. Sarah inclined her head, acknowledging the gesture without fanfare. The unit's atmosphere softened, barriers that had separated her from her peers started to dissolve. Conversations flowed more freely, and Sarah found herself drawn into tactical discussions rather than standing at the periphery. Despite the growing acceptance, Sarah remained mindful of the balance she needed to maintain. She was determined not to let past accolades define her, nor to let the whispers of her valor overshadow the present mission. Her focus was unwavering, her commitment to the team absolute. In the evenings, as the base quieted, Sarah often reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the silence of covert operations to the evolving dynamics of this unit, she recognized the power of quiet strength. Her leadership was not forged in loud declarations but in steady resolve and thoughtful action. The days turned into weeks, and the unit's cohesion strengthened under the subtle influence of Sarah's presence. Her ability to lead without fanfare became a cornerstone of their success, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most profound impact comes from those who listen more than they speak. One afternoon, during a routine briefing, Colonel James Harding, the commanding officer overseeing Fort Harmony, arrived unexpectedly. His reputation as a stern but fair leader preceded him, and his gaze swept the room before settling on Sarah. The room fell silent, the weight of his presence palpable. Colonel Harding's voice cut through the quiet. Lieutenant Mitchell, I've reviewed your records and after-action reports. Your commendations for valor are not just medals on a chest, they represent a caliber of leadership this unit needs. Sarah met his eyes, a mixture of respect and resolve shining in her own. Thank you, sir. I'm committed to serving this unit to the best of my abilities. The colonel nodded approvingly. Good. I expect you to continue setting the standard. As he departed, the officers exchanged glances, the acknowledgement from their commanding officer sealing Sarah's place among them. She was no longer just the quiet newcomer, she was a leader whose past and present combined to inspire those around her. That evening, Sarah stood once again on the balcony of her quarters, the base bathed in twilight. The murmurs of the day had shifted, from doubt to respect, from distance to inclusion. She felt the weight of responsibility but also the quiet satisfaction of progress. Her thoughts returned to the missions that had shaped her, the silent battles fought in shadows where words were scarce but actions spoke volumes. Here, in this new chapter, she was learning that leadership required not just courage but the willingness to be seen and heard on her own terms. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the unit looked to her with a trust that had once seemed impossible. Sarah understood that the journey was far from over, but the revelation of her past had transformed her presence into a beacon of steady strength. The quiet officer had become an integral part of the team's fabric, her valor no longer a secret but a source of inspiration. And in that realization lay the promise of what was yet to come. The early morning sun had barely breached the horizon when the alarm blared through Fort Harmony, jolting the compound into immediate action. The unit was mobilizing for a real-world operation, a hostage rescue mission deep within hostile territory. The tension was palpable, each soldier moving with practiced urgency, but beneath the surface lay a collective awareness that this was more than a drill. Lives hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood at the heart of the command center, her eyes scanning the digital maps and intelligence feeds that flickered across multiple screens. The gravity of the situation settled over her like a familiar cloak, the weight of responsibility sharpening her focus. The mission was complex: infiltrate enemy lines, locate and extract hostages held in a fortified compound, and exfiltrate without triggering a broader conflict. The team looked to Sarah for guidance. Her prior successes in simulations and the revelation of her covert experience had earned her a pivotal role in planning and execution. Yet, as always, she eschewed fanfare, preferring to let her actions speak amid the controlled chaos. Major Reynolds approached, his expression grave but trusting. "Lieutenant, the team is ready. Your plan will dictate our success. Sarah nodded, voice steady. We proceed with a multi-phase operation. Alpha Team will breach the eastern perimeter under cover of darkness, securing entry points. Bravo will provide overwatch and suppress enemy reinforcements. Coordination and timing are critical. As the unit deployed, Sarah maintained communication, her commands concise yet authoritative. Her calm presence radiated through the comms, steadying nerves and aligning efforts. The operation unfolded with a tense precision, each move calculated to minimize risk and maximize efficiency. When the breach commenced, the team encountered fierce resistance. Explosions echoed through the compound, gunfire lighting the darkness in staccato bursts. Amid the chaos, Sarah's voice cut through. Bravo Team, flank left. Alpha, hold position and secure hostages. Evac route Delta is clear. Her strategic foresight became evident as unexpected enemy reinforcements approached from the south. Anticipating this, Sarah redirected Squad Charlie to intercept, buying crucial time for the extraction. Her ability to adapt rapidly to the fluid battlefield was the linchpin of the operation's success. Inside the compound, Alpha Team moved swiftly, locating the hostages and securing their safety. Sarah coordinated their extraction, ensuring medical teams were on standby and that evacuation routes remained secure. Her commands were clear, leaving no room for hesitation. As the unit began the withdrawal, an enemy ambush threatened to trap them. The tension spiked, but Sarah's composed direction enabled a countermaneuver. Suppressing fire at coordinates 3 to 7. All units, form defensive perimeter. Medics prioritize evac of wounded. The team executed flawlessly, pushing back the ambush and moving steadily toward extraction points. Throughout the ordeal, Sarah's leadership was a beacon, her quiet strength inspiring confidence and resilience. When the last hostage was secured aboard the extraction helicopters, a wave of relief swept through the unit. Back at Fort Harmony, the atmosphere was electric with recognition of what had been achieved. Major Reynolds approached Sarah, his voice tinged with both pride and respect. "Lieutenant, your tactical brilliance and calm under fire were instrumental. You led this operation with the precision and courage of a seasoned commander." Sarah allowed herself a brief nod, the weight of the moment settling in. "It was a team effort, sir. I'm proud of every member." Later, Colonel James Harding addressed the unit in a formal ceremony. His tone was solemn but filled with admiration. "Today, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell demonstrated exemplary leadership and bravery. In the face of danger, her insight and composure saved lives and ensured mission success." As Colonel Harding pinned a commendation medal on her uniform, the room broke into applause. Lieutenant Daniels stood nearby, eyes reflecting a deep respect that had grown from skepticism to admiration. Sarah met his gaze steadily, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. The ceremony was more than recognition, it symbolized a profound transformation. From the quiet newcomer dismissed by many, Sarah had risen to become a leader whose valor and strategic mind were integral to the unit's identity. That evening, standing amidst her team, Sarah felt the culmination of her journey, proof that leadership need not be loud to be powerful. Her silence had been her strength, and her actions had spoken volumes. As the unit prepared for the challenges ahead, Sarah's resolve was unwavering. The mission's success was a testament to the power of quiet courage, steady leadership, and the unyielding belief in the team she now called family.